His name is David Belugan. I saw this news story and it intrigued me. The title, 9-year-old boy from Pennsylvania graduates high school. All right, did you catch that? 9 years old and he graduated from high school just this past week. So when he was in the 3rd grade, his parents noticed that he was getting his work done very quickly before any of his classmates, and they found out that he was quite bored in school. And so during COVID, they had him tested and found out not that he was just gifted, but that he was exceptionally, profoundly gifted. And he says, David here says this, quote, "I think there are a lot of kids like me out there who could graduate at the age of 10 or 11, but they don't always have the resources and the support that they need to use their full potential." Unquote. Kid's pretty smart, isn't he? So in 2020, he enrolled in high school, and in a couple years he graduated, and so now he wants to pursue studying astronomy, engineering, and software development. He's already reached out to University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and Princeton. The title of my message today is, Who Am I? Who am I? It's right out of Romans chapter 12, verse 3. And we are just going to look at one verse today, but please understand, we will pick things up next time we're together. I think I'm going to do about maybe 3 or 4 verses, so just, and if you've been with us in the study of Romans, at times I go through a whole chapter, but just Romans chapter 12, my oh my. Romans chapter 12 is an unbelievable chapter in God's holy word. And so if you read Romans 12, verse 3, it says, and I'm reading out of the New Living Translation today, it says, "Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given you. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought." And so when I think of a person like young David here, David Belugan, I don't know his family. I don't know his life. Obviously never had any conversations with him. And I hope that his identity is grounded in Christ. But just for the sake of illustration, let's imagine that it's not. How does he answer this question, who am I? How does he answer this question of identity? Well, simply he would say, well, I'm profoundly gifted. I graduated from high school at the age of 9. And you don't necessarily need to say that with a heart filled with pride, but let's take the opportunity to ask ourselves a question. How do you think of yourself? How do you think about yourself? Do you think, if I could run the risk of offending you today, and I don't want to offend you, but sometimes if the Bible offends us, it's a good thing. Because if the Bible offends us, we need to be offended. And so just let's have that posture here, because this is coming right out of the text, folks. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. And so this is an identity question, isn't it? It's like, how do I think about myself? The tendency, I think, is to think too highly of ourselves. I think that's our default. One writer puts it this way: to himself, every man is the most important person in the world. All right, listen. I think we think too highly of ourselves. So as I've been thinking about this week, I said, okay, how do I communicate this? Because some might say, I don't think too highly of myself. I'm thankful to God, etc., and praise the Lord. But I started asking myself the question, in what fashion do we tend to think too highly of ourselves? How do we think too highly of ourselves? And so I've got maybe some suggestions that this might be true in maybe not in any of our lives here, but people out there, right? So number one, I've got more money than you. I've got more money than you. And these are all comparison questions, because if you're thinking too highly of yourself, higher than what? Right? So if you tend to compare yourself to others and you say, what, I've made some pretty good decisions, I've got more money, and maybe you look down upon people, not intentionally, but maybe you do. Or how about this one? I'm prettier than you. Or I'm stronger than you. How about I'm more educated than you? I've got this degree or that degree. and you just put yourself in a posture that you're thinking a little too highly of yourself. How about this one? I know more of the Bible than you do. You're in your 242 group, you hear some of the questions people ask, and you're like, kind of maybe roll your eyes a little bit and say, how do they not know that already? I know more of the Bible than you do. All right, if none of those have offended you, certainly this one will. My political position is better than yours. Or you could rephrase it this way: my view on this particular issue is better than yours. All right, maybe you feel like the other political party is completely off and completely wrong. And Republicans here are thinking he's talking about Democrats, and Democrats here are thinking he's talking about Republicans, right? My political position is better. Are you thinking too highly of yourself? How about my school is better than yours? Or maybe my alma mater is the best that there is. Or how about I live in a better neighborhood than you do? You drive through some neighborhoods, you're like, man, I'm glad I don't live here. You thinking too highly of yourself? One more. Glad everybody's still here. Nobody's left yet. My nationality is better than yours. Or you could say my ethnic group. You know, whatever culture I'm a part of is better. Or I'm thankful I was born this particular culture. And you meet somebody else, you're like, man, I'm glad I'm not like them. All right, do you see how this verse might apply to us? All right, so let's take a closer look at Romans 12:3, and it begins with Paul saying, because of the privilege and authority God has given me, or some of your translations might say, by the grace of God, I'm saying this, or I'm telling you this. Here's how I interpret that, to apply that into our lives. You need people in your life to help you grow. You need people in your life to help you grow. Because the Apostle Paul was in the Romans' life. And so he's bringing up this issue. By the grace of God, because of this position I have, I'm going to ask you this hard question. Because of this position that I have in your life, I am going to maybe bring up an issue that may not be comfortable to talk about. Paul says, through the grace given to me, I say to this. I say this to you. I'm going to say it. Don't think too highly of yourself. That's what Paul is saying. And Paul is filled with the Holy Spirit, and so by the power of the Holy Spirit, he's talking to us through these words. See, this is not just written to the Roman Christians a couple thousand years ago. This is written to the Casa Grande Christians in 2023. I almost said 2022. What Paul is saying here, he's saying, by the grace of God, Paul says, I'm not coming at this with this sense of position of superiority or arrogance, but by God's grace, because I care about you. Don't think the wrong way. Adjust your thoughts. Don't think too highly of yourself. So the Roman Christians had the Apostle Paul. So who do you have? You know, I mean, I'm here, right, and I'm sharing God's word with you, and so the Lord has brought you here, and I want to be faithful to share God's word as best I can, trying to make application in our society. But beyond this, do you have maybe a good friend or a mentor or a home group leader? Do you have someone in your life who loves God more than you do, that can speak into your life? Someone who's walked the road of Jesus longer than you have? I mean, there are people in this church that have walked with the Lord longer than I've been alive. And they have a deep and abiding relationship with God. And if you're here and you're a young Christian and you want somebody in your life to help you, man, just look around and get to know some people, have some conversations, and trust that the Holy Spirit will bring you into those relationships. But we need to give people permission to speak into our lives. We can't just build a wall around our hearts and say, hey, it's just me, I'm good. No, we need to say, ask me the hard questions. Here's what my life is all about. So we could maybe flip this around and look at it the other way too. Are you Paul to anyone? You know, Paul was reaching into the Romans' lives and saying, listen, I want to make sure you guys aren't thinking too highly of yourself. Is there somebody that God has brought you that you can have that kind of a relationship with? You know, you can disciple them. You can help them grow. Is there anyone in your life that you can say, through the grace of God, I'm going to tell you like it is? I'm going to tell you that you're not thinking the right way about yourself, that you need to examine, like, why did you just say that? Why did you just tell that joke? Why did you just kind of roll your eyes when they said that? Or why did you respond to that? Are you able to speak into someone's life? Is someone speaking into your life? Is someone pouring into you? Are you pouring into anybody? Paul wrote in the book of Ephesians, excuse me, to me who am less than the least, less than the least of all the saints, this grace was given, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. Paul, by the grace of God, had this opportunity to speak into people's lives. And notice the passage here, it says, to everyone among you, to each of you. This was for the whole church, every single person in the Roman church. Paul was saying, I think you might be thinking too highly of yourself. Each of you, everyone, nobody's exempt. And we can extrapolate out of that this applies to all of us. You know what one symptom maybe of thinking too highly of yourself is? Gossip. You know, if you have a tendency to gossip, you might be thinking too highly of yourself. You know what another symptom of thinking too highly of yourself is? That you're in a little clique. You know, that you only hang out, after the service is over, you only hang out with the same people, and you don't reach out to somebody, maybe because they're different than you, maybe they're a whole different generation, because, you know, you might be in your 20s and they're in their 70s. So you think you're better than them because you're young and you've got strength. Or maybe you're 70 and they're 20 and you think they're just young and dumb and they don't. Well, you know what? Don't be in a clique, right? Sunday after the service is a perfect time to meet somebody new. To meet somebody and just to get out of your comfort zone. The first word of friendship is hello. I just walk across the lobby, walk across the auditorium, walk across the cafe, and instead of sitting with the same people, you walk over and say, hey, do you mind if I sit here? Well, what's your name? Hello. You know, listen, you guys know, I think you might know, I'm an introvert, right? It takes a lot of strength for me to walk up to somebody I don't know and say hi. I mean, I've gotten used to it because it's my job, really. I mean, I need to do this. But once I meet people, it's so beautiful and it's so rich. And I love hearing people's stories. And sometimes I ask people that. When I was with 10th Hour this past week, Hulu and I were sitting there and we were talking to a young lady. And I just said, what's your story? And she just started sharing her story, and it was such a blessing to hear what the Lord was doing in her life and where she had come from. We've all got a story, and so I'd encourage you, gossip, being part of a clique, just stop all of that. Don't think too highly of yourself, and jump into some new relationships. You will be so blessed if you do that. Because if you're thinking more highly of yourself than you ought, this is a sin called pride. Pride. The middle letter of pride is I. I love this definition of pride. Delusions, I love that word. Delusions of greatness on account of one's achievements, possessions, or status. If you think you're great, you're wrong. Let me give you a couple examples of people in the Bible who thought too highly of themselves. We'll throw the references up on the screen. We're not going to put all the verses on there, but if you're interested in reading about these individuals, you can. The first one is in Acts chapter 12. It's a little bit of story about King Herod, and there's lots of Herods in the Bible, so this would be, I believe this would be the grandson of the one who murdered all the babies in Bethlehem. I believe this is his grandson. Not a cool family. So anyhow, so Herod, who was the king, he was really mad at the citizens of Tyre and Sidon. So two cities there, and he was just really mad at these cities. It's really interesting to look at the Bible through a political lens sometime when you read it. Just think about that. And so these two cities, Tyre and Sidon, they sent a delegation to try to make peace with King Herod. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing, right? We want to make peace with the king. Because their cities were dependent upon him for food, right? So you see some politics, some dealing going on here. So they send delegates, and the delegates talk to a man named Blastus, who's the assistant to the king. And they win the support of Blastus. Blastus like, hey, you guys, I'm glad you're here. I think we can work something out. I know Herod's mad at you. So let's set up a time. We'll get an appointment together with Herod so you can talk to him. So it says in Acts chapter 12, when the day arrived, Herod put on his royal robes, sat on his throne, and he made a speech. And the people gave him this great standing ovation. And they started shouting, "This is the voice of a God, not a man." You see what they're doing, right? This is the voice of a God, not a man. So what happened to Herod? He took this to heart. And he's like, yes, I'm God, not a man. The Bible says in Acts chapter 12:23, instantly an angel of the Lord struck Herod with a sickness because he accepted the people's worship instead of giving glory to God. So he was consumed with worms and died. Why was he consumed with worms and died? Because he thought too highly of himself. He accepted the people's praise. And he didn't say, no, don't worship me, give glory to God. He said, no, worship me, don't give glory to God. And God killed him. All right? There's another man that thought too highly of himself, and this is from the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, and his name is Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar. He was walking on his roof, and back then roofs were flat. And he was a king in Babylon. And Babylon, you could look at some of the artist renderings of Babylon, probably one of the most amazing, beautiful cities in all of ancient times. And so he was on his royal palace walking along his roof, and he looked across his city, and he said, "Look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor." And Daniel chapter 4, verse 31 says, while these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses." That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. So he came down with some crazy disease, like he thought he was an animal. And he went out and he lived that way. His hair grew long as eagle's feathers. His nails were like bird's claws. Why? Because he had pride, and he thought too highly of himself. He thought too highly of himself. He disobeyed Romans chapter 12, verse 3. And he took all this glory for himself. So God forbid that we do that, and we look around at whatever little fortune we've amassed or whatever little life we've achieved for ourselves, and we think too highly of yourself. Okay? If we look at the rest of this verse, and we look at then how should we think? So how should we think of it? What's the right way to think about myself? Because I don't want to think too highly of myself. And the Bible here says, be honest in your evaluation, or think of yourself with sober judgment. And so I've just put it this way: think about yourself sensibly. And this is right out of the scripture. It means to have an honest evaluation of yourself. The word humility is a great word. Humility means that I have an accurate recognition of who I am in the sight of God. I'm thinking properly about myself, and I'm thinking properly about God. Jesus told a story about humility. He told a parable. A parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And so in this parable, he said, hey, imagine that there's a banquet going on, and you're invited to go to this wonderful banquet. And so he says, when you are invited to this, let's say, wedding feast, as Jesus said there, and this is Luke chapter 14. When you're invited to this wedding feast, don't immediately go in and sit in the best place, the head table or up close to the front. He says, because if someone more honorable than you is invited, the host is going to have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, you can't sit here. Please go sit in the back," and then they'll give that place to an honored guest. He says, when you're invited, go sit in the lowest spot. Because the one who invited you may come and say, hey, friend, why are you sitting back here? Come up and sit up here. Do you see what's happening? And then Jesus ends the parable by saying, whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. And so we don't want to exalt ourselves. Psalm chapter 75 says that promotion comes not from the east, south, or west, but promotion comes from the Lord. Let the Lord exalt you. Let the Lord promote you. We want to have humility. Everybody say humility. Humility. This is what we want. James chapter 4 verse 6 says he gives more grace. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So if you want more grace in your life, humility accesses grace, and you will grow in grace. One of my favorite Bible characters is Timothy. One of Paul's assistants, a person that Paul discipled. One of the reasons why he's one of my favorite Bible characters is because in the book of Philippians, Paul writes about him, I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. Everybody else is concerned about their own interests, but Timothy's concerned about you and about your interests. Timothy was this others-centered individual, and I love that. And so our attitude and our posture in all of this, as we're thinking, I want to think sensibly about myself. I want to have a heart of serving others. Any greatness, quote unquote, that I've received, anything that makes me a little bit different or better than others, and I'm putting those in air quotes for those listening on the radio. Any of this greatness or better that I have, the reason is so that I can lift you up. The reason why I've been given a unique position, and whatever that means, is so that I can lift you up. Because we owe everything to God. He could take away anything at any moment. He could take away my voice, and I wouldn't be able to teach anymore. We're all dependent upon him. He could take away anything at any moment. And so God has given each one of us an assignment. And so thinking soberly about ourselves, thinking honestly, evaluating ourselves correctly, also applies to making sure our thoughts don't go in the opposite direction. Because these are the two dangers, right? I think too highly of myself, or I think too lowly of myself. I can think too lowly of myself. I can think that I'm worthless. I can think that I'm useless. I can think that my life has no purpose. I could think, man, I've messed everything up. I've made all these mistakes. If only I would have invested this money instead of spent it. If only I would have taken better care of my body. If only I would have taken that job instead of this job. And then we have our lives start filled with regrets, and maybe we look in the mirror and we don't like the way we look, and we say, man, I'm worthless. I've ruined my life. The world would be better without me. I call this Eeyore thinking. Eeyore. Do you know Eeyore? I'm going to actually read some actual quotes from Eeyore. Okay? End of the road. Nothing to do and no hope of things getting better. Don't worry about me. Go and enjoy yourself. I'll stay here and be miserable. Is that the way you think? Man, if that's the way you think, you need a little Tigger in your thinking. No, not really. You need a little Bible in your thinking, right? You need a little Bible. Listen, here's what you need. Get that picture of Eeyore off the screen, man. Thank you. All right. This right here, Psalm 139. This is how you need to think. You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. Isn't this beautiful? I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows full well. Can you throw that on the screen? Psalm 139, that passage there. Look at that second line there. You covered me in my mother's womb. In my mother's womb. Every little baby inside the womb of any woman is covered by the Lord. I mean, isn't that a beautiful passage? I'll be going to a meeting this week up in the valley for pastors, and it's related to ending abortion and just some of the different things that we can do. I'm always, anytime I bring a topic like this up, I'm always sensitive that there's some people that, are either pro-choice or you've maybe had abortions. And we have a whole ministry here called Healing from the Effects of Abortion-Related Trauma. So if any ladies have had abortions and you haven't processed that, you haven't worked through that, just please, you can email, and everything's obviously completely anonymous, heart@calvarycg.org, and we'll have somebody talk to you, and you can begin those relationships. But this passage and many others really talk about how every little baby is born, or every little baby inside the womb is a gift from the Lord, and God knows that little baby, and I don't understand, and I want to be honest, I don't understand how people can be pro-choice. I just don't understand. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I don't understand that. I don't understand how a little baby inside the womb of a mother, to kill that baby, I don't understand how you could be for that. And, I try to be a pretty honest person, and I try to, listen to people I disagree with, and I'm definitely open to listening to anybody that feels differently than I do about that. But as I read the Bible, it says that this baby is born, is made in the image of God. And the fact that any lady that is pregnant, that fetus, that little baby, is eventually going to grow to be a person. I was speaking with somebody who they were just not really, they're a younger person in there. You hear a lot in the media, right? And so I'm not saying they were pro-choice, but they maybe were a little bit less pro-life than I was. And I was talking to them, and they're saying, I think women should be able to really, and we were just having an honest conversation. And this is really important, folks. When you get into conversations with people, don't be arrogant. Don't be so firm on just listen to people and then share your position, right? We have to get past this, argumentative spirit. We just need to have good conversations with people. Yeah, I was talking to this person, and about choice in life, and I said, well, what about like when the baby's born? Like, would you agree that it's wrong to maybe kill a baby that's maybe a week old, or even 2 or 3 days old? Do you feel that would be wrong? And they said, oh, 100%, absolutely. And then I could start to see, like, they understood, right? They said, oh yeah, I guess then to kill it while it's still in the womb, it's kind of like the same thing. And so it broke my heart when I saw something, and I didn't listen to the State of the Union. I didn't really, don't really know what President Biden talked about, but I did see some pictures of a whole bunch of people that were there that had a pin on that said abortion. I mean, to me, that's like, what? Like, this is your issue, abortion? Anyways, I want to, it's our responsibility to me, it's not a political issue, it's a moral issue. And so I'm not gonna back down from talking about it. It's just such a tragedy to me. And I'm thankful for Roe v. Wade, but I think there's more that needs to be done. But again, folks, please hear my heart. Grace, mercy, kindness, compassion, but not compromising. All right? So getting back then to what we're talking about here with honestly evaluating yourself, right? Thinking of yourself with sober judgment. We need to understand, and what I was saying before I did a little bit of a side road on abortion there, is that I was addressing, Eeyore thinking, right? Stinking thinking, like I'm worthless, etc., right? You're made, you are made in the image of God. You are made in the image of God, and He loves you. And I know, I remember as a young person, I would look in the mirror and lay in my bed at night thinking like, man, I think I should just kill myself. And I had two parents that loved me. I was, I never went hungry. I mean, I had a very good childhood. And I think just these thoughts, like, oh, I should kill myself. And it wasn't like I never tried to kill myself, right? But I think these are just demonic thoughts. That the God of this age just kind of, throws, shoots these arrows into our minds. You are precious, no matter who you are here in this room, how old you are, how young you are, your background. You are absolutely precious to God, and He loves you. He created you. He fashioned you. He made you. Everything about you is special, and He wants to love you, and He wants to show you how much He cares about you. He wants to breathe new life into you. And so next time you have these thoughts, I'm worthless, I should kill myself, on and on it goes. People would be happier without me, all of this junk. Just rebuke those thoughts and recognize that they are lies. You are being lied to. You are being lied to. And open up your Bible and read Psalm 139, verse 13 and 14. Because that's written there about you. God fashioned you and He made you. In your mother's womb, he made you. And there's nothing you can do to make Him love you any less than He already does. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. All right, and then lastly here, so be honest in your evaluation of yourself or think soberly about yourself. But then think about yourself according to your faith. Think about yourself according to your faith. That's how Paul ends this verse. I'm assuming most of you believe in Jesus, if not everybody. So here's how I want to say this. Ground your identity in Jesus. Ground your identity in Jesus. You don't need to rely on other people for your identity or your worth. Your worth is not based on what other people think about you, what I think about you, what your parents think about you, what your children think about you. That has nothing to do with your worth. So stop feeding on the approval of others. When somebody compliments you, say thank you, but don't fish for a compliment. Don't look for that compliment to build you up. Let Christ build you up. Because if you define yourselves by other people's opinions of you, man, you're on a roller coaster. You're on a roller coaster because then when people are happy with you, you're going to have this artificial joy, really, a plastic joy. And then when people get a little upset at you, you're going to be at the bottom in the valley. Your identity is grounded in Jesus and what He thinks. So run to God's word, find out what He thinks about you, find out what He says about you. No human being can make you complete. If you're single and looking for a spouse, your spouse is not going to make you complete. Oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. But a healthy identity is not found by mustering up value from within yourself. Our identity needs to be grounded in Christ. We need to think of ourselves according to faith, according to our faith. And the stronger your faith becomes, the better your identity is going to be. The stronger your faith comes, the more accurately you're going to be thinking about yourself. So let God define you. Let God define you, not yourself. It doesn't matter what other people think. We don't want to be rude and all of that, but we want God. We want our identity to be grounded in the Lord. Okay, so that's my message. Now let's go back to where we started and make some application here. All right. So remember David, 9-year-old genius, just graduated from high school. So if his identity is grounded in Jesus, then he's going to be thinking like this. He's like thinking, my goodness, God has made me a little bit different. He's given me this incredible brain and this incredible opportunity. How am I going to use that for His glory? How am I going to use my life and my education? What could I study that might help advance the cause of Christ? So he's not saying like, oh, I'm super intellectual or whatever, right? So if you've been blessed financially, you should say, well, God, you've blessed me financially more than you have other people. How can I use this In what way should I be generous to build your kingdom? How can I use this, God, for your glory? If you've been blessed with maybe some status or position that other people haven't, you look at that and you say, wow, God, look at where you've put me. Is there maybe somebody here you want me to reach? Is there, like, how can I use my special position that you've given me to bless other people, to advance your kingdom? I mean, there's people in this room that are struggling with cancer. And I know of one brother that he looked at his struggle and he said, how can I reach other cancer patients? That's what I'm talking about. That's not thinking too low. Oh, I got cancer. I mean, God, I must have done something wrong. God must not love me. I guess he's done with me, so I'm going to die. Might as well just, watch Wheel of Fortune all day, No, he's saying, okay, God, you put me in this situation. What can I do now to advance your kingdom? Because as a cancer patient, you can reach other cancer patients. They'll listen to you. They may not listen to me. Maybe you've been born into a certain ethnic group. Native American, Hispanic, German, whatever it might be. When I was engaged to my wife is Cuban, I'm American, I had a friend who was Puerto Rican, and my friend was telling me, hey, you better be careful because, Cubans, this and that. I'm like, what? You just labeled this whole group of people in a negative fashion because they're Cuban? And you did that because you're Puerto Rican? Does that make sense to you? And so if you're part of a certain ethnic group, you can say, okay, God, this was your plan for me. Maybe I'm Native American, whatever ethnic group it might be. How can I use this that maybe I used to pride myself on this and think I'm better than others, but how can I use this to advance your kingdom within this particular ethnic group or maybe with a different ethnic group? How did you make me different, Lord, or significant in such a way that now I can contribute to the lives of others in Jesus' name? Do you see how that works? So you don't look at all the ways that God has blessed you, and maybe you're thinking too highly of yourself, but you're saying, okay, now how can I use this to advance the kingdom? 1 Peter 4:10, as each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Everyone's received a gift. How can we use it to minister to each other? In other words, I'm going to take my me, and I'm going to develop it to the full, and I'm going to use it to bless others. This is what faith does. You've heard me mention about our building facility here, and there's plenty of seats today. Anybody know why? Super Bowl Sunday. Right, exactly. Oh, thank you very much. I'm thinking carnally and you're thinking spiritually. I love it. Well, I don't love the fact that I'm thinking carnally, but yeah, so Prime Time is our 55 plus ministry, and they have a big event after the second service. So our second service is going to be packed. So you're the smart ones here. Okay, now I just lost what I was going to say here. Let me see. Hang on. It'll come back to me. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, you want to know about that, don't you? So typically, both services are pretty full, and so over the last year, really, I've been talking to architects and construction people and realtors and bankers, and we're just trying to figure out, Lord, what's your plan for us? And so I'm sharing this in the context of gifts, like everybody has received a gift. And so we were looking at buying the old Big Lots on Florence. You might know it's like 36,000 square feet. It would have been awesome. It would have been perfect, but they don't want to sell it to a church. So that the door kind of closed there. And I'm summarizing a really long process in a short period of time. And so as our board met, we recently had this idea to let's put together a task force, like a new facility task force. So a group of people that are really smart and skilled and have a lot of experience in building things and buying major things, and we'll let them dig into this and explore things, right? Because everybody has a gift, right? And some people have gifts in these type of things, right? Some of you have gifts in teaching. Some of you have gifts in just loving and hospitality and serving and encouragement. And so we just put together a group of 7 or 8 people, and they're going to be meeting this week. And they're going to be just kind of getting to know each other and talking about, here's the process we're gonna go through. So I'm really excited about that, because it takes some things off my plate and puts them into the hands of people that really know what they're doing. So my learning curve is like, woo, trying to figure all this out, but they've already done all of this, right? And so so that's an example of 1 Peter 4:10. Everyone's received a gift, and now they're going to use it to minister to that. So keep them in prayer. Keep that whole process in prayer. They're going to come back and be able to say, we're going to buy this building, or we're going to start building here, and then we'll go from there. All right, so identity. Who am I? We have to know who I am. Don't think too highly of yourself. Don't think too lowly of yourself. Have a scriptural, godly perspective of who you are. God made you to serve him. He's given you gifts and abilities. The beautiful thing about this passage, just if you glance then at your Bibles, if you look at verse 4, verse 5, verse 6, 7, 8, it all talks about this subject of being part of the body, belonging to each other, and then serving together with these different gifts. And then it highlights different gifts. And so next week, we're having a baptism next week. So depending on how many people get baptized, we'll start to dig into this passage.